Silent Hill. Harry Mason is a writer from Portland, Oregon, who, in the year 1999, is driving through the foggy mountain town of Silent Hill with his adopted daughter Cheryl when a mysterious figure appears in the road, causing him to swerve and crash. And when he wakes up, Cheryl is gone, and the town around him is completely empty and covered in a thick, impenetrable fog. And as he begins searching for her, the town transforms into something indescribable, where the streets are filled with grotesque creatures, and the environment shifts without warning between the foggy waking world and a pitch-black industrial hellscape known as the Other World, where the walls are rusted metal and the floors are grating and everything is covered in blood. And the deeper Harry goes into the town, the more he begins to uncover the history of a young girl named Alessa Gillespie, who was born in Silent Hill in 1970, and whose mother Dahlia was a devoted member of a cult known simply as the Order, which worshipped a god that they believed could be brought into the world through Alessa, who they believed was the chosen vessel. And so, in 1986, when Alessa was just 16 years old, Dahlia and the Order performed a ritual to ignite the god inside of her, and the ritual went wrong, burning most of Alessa's body and leaving her in a permanent state of agony, kept alive in the basement of Alchemilla Hospital by the supernatural power growing inside her. And during those 7 years of suffering, Alessa's psychic abilities split her soul in two, projecting the other half outward, and that other half was found on the side of a road as a baby girl and adopted by Harry Mason and named Cheryl. And so, when Harry brings Cheryl back to Silent Hill, it is Alessa who pulls her back, because Alessa wants to die, and the only way to end her suffering is to reunite her soul and starve the god of the power it needs to be born. And by the end of the game, Harry does reunite the two halves of Alessa's soul, and the god is destroyed. And a new baby is born from the remains of Alessa's power, and Harry takes her and leaves Silent Hill forever. And depending on the ending, the fate of this baby and Harry himself changes. But the story of Silent Hill as a franchise had only just begun, establishing something no horror game had done before it, which is the idea that the most terrifying thing in the world is not a monster, but a place that knows exactly what you are most afraid of. Silent Hill 2. James Sunderland is a man from Ashfield who receives a letter from his wife, Mary, telling him to come find her in their special place in Silent Hill. And the reason this is so disturbing is that Mary has been dead for 3 years, and James knows this because he watched her die. And despite knowing this, he drives to Silent Hill anyway. And the town he finds when he arrives is not the same fog-covered resort town it might have once been, but something entirely personal and hostile and shaped entirely around him. And almost immediately he encounters a creature that will become one of the most iconic and analyzed figures in the history of horror gaming, which is Pyramid Head, a towering executioner in a butcher's apron with a massive rusted metal pyramid for a head, who pursues James relentlessly through the town and whose presence feels less like a monster encounter and more like a punishment. And as James moves deeper through Silent Hill, meeting other lost souls, including a deeply troubled young woman named Angela Orozco, who flinches at the sight of men, and a disturbed young man named Eddie Dombrowski, who has been driven to violence, and a little girl named Laura who knew Mary in the hospital and actually loved her, and who treats James with open contempt. The picture of who James Sunderland really is becomes clearer and more horrifying. And by the time James reaches the Lakeview Hotel, which was the special place he shared with Mary, the game delivers one of the most devastating reveals in all of gaming, which is that James did not watch Mary die from her illness. He smothered her with a pillow in her hospital bed because he was exhausted and resentful and could not face her suffering anymore, and he repressed this memory so completely that he genuinely believed she was waiting for him. And Pyramid Head was never a monster hunting him, but a manifestation of his own guilt, a self-punishment his subconscious constructed to make him pay for what he did. And depending on which ending is reached, James either drowns himself in the lake or drives away with Laura to try and rebuild his life, or in the worst endings, something far more tragic occurs. And Silent Hill 2 remains to this day the most critically acclaimed entry in the franchise and one of the most profound explorations of grief, guilt, and self-destruction ever put into an interactive medium. Silent Hill 3. Heather Mason is a 17-year-old girl from Portland who in the year 2003 wakes up in a diner after having a nightmare about a dark amusement park. And while heading home through a shopping mall, she is approached by a private detective named Douglas Cartland, who tells her that someone has been asking questions about her. And almost immediately after this encounter, the mall transforms into the other world, in the same way Silent Hill always does for those it has a claim on. And the reason it has a claim on Heather is something she does not yet know, but which the player begins to suspect almost immediately, which is that Heather is not who she thinks she is. And when she finally makes it home, she finds Douglas outside her, the apartment door, and her father, Harry Mason, dead on the couch, killed by a woman named Claudia Wolf, who is a high-ranking member of the Order, the same cult that tortured Alessa Gillespie 17 years earlier. And Claudia believes that Heather is the vessel through which the Order's god can finally be born into the world, because Heather is Alessa, and she is also the baby, born at the end of the first game, who Harry raised as his own daughter, and who has been living an ordinary life with no memory of any of it. And Claudia does not want to hurt Heather. She genuinely believes she is doing the right thing, believing that the god's arrival will create a paradise for the suffering. And so, everything in Silent Hill 3 is about Heather fighting, not just the monsters of the other world, but the identity being forced onto her by someone who has decided what she is and what she is for. And eventually Heather makes it to Silent Hill itself, where she confronts Claudia, and where the god is briefly born. But Heather destroys it and finally gets to decide for herself who she is. And Silent Hill 3 is the only entry in the franchise to give its story a note of genuine defiant victory. And it also stands as a direct continuation of the original game, making it unique in the series for the weight of legacy it carries in every single scene. Silent Hill 4, The Room. Henry Townsend is a 21-year-old photographer who lives alone in apartment 302 of the South Ashfield Heights complex in Ashfield, and in the year 2003, he wakes up to discover that his front door has been chained and padlocked from the inside, and that the windows cannot be opened, and that the phone does not work, and that no one responds when he bangs on the walls. And what begins as an ordinary nightmare scenario of being trapped in your own home becomes something far more horrifying when a hole opens in Henry's bathroom wall, and inside the hole is a tunnel that leads to a series of other worlds that are not Silent Hill exactly, but something adjacent to it where the same fog and rust and blood logic applies. And through these holes, Henry witnesses the murders of a series of victims at the hands of a man named Walter Sullivan. And Walter Sullivan is not a stranger to anyone who has been paying attention, because a newspaper clipping in Henry's apartment mentions him as a serial killer who died in prison years ago, and yet here he is still killing. And the reason for this is that Walter Sullivan grew up in apartment 302 and was abandoned there as an infant by his mother, and spent his entire childhood believing the apartment itself was his mother. And the Order found him and told him about the 21 Sacraments, a ritual murder sequence that, if completed, would allow him to return to his mother. And so, he killed 21 people, each one corresponding to a specific sacrament in the ritual. And Henry and his neighbor Eileen Galvin are the final two victims, and the apartment itself becomes increasingly hostile as the game progresses, with ghosts haunting the rooms and the walls bleeding, and the space that was once Henry's sanctuary becoming the most dangerous place in all of the worlds he travels through. And Silent Hill 4 is the most formally experimental entry in the franchise, using the domestic space as the primary site of horror in a way that still feels radical. Because the scariest thing in the game is never a monster in another world, but the room you have to come home to. Silent Hill Origins. Travis Grady is a truck driver passing through the mountains near Silent Hill in the year 1983 when he sees a young girl on fire on the side of the road. And he does what most people would not do, which is run into the burning building she was dragged from and pull her out and get her to Alchemilla Hospital. And the girl is Alessa Gillespie, who the player already knows from the first game was burned in a cult ritual and kept alive in the hospital basement. And so, Origins is a prequel to the original game, filling in the events that shaped Silent Hill into the place it became. And as Travis moves through the town, he begins to experience his own personal otherworld, populated by his own psychological history. And that history is deeply disturbing because Travis grew up in Silent Hill and his mother was institutionalized at Sanitarium Cedar Grove after she tried to kill him when he was a child. and his father checked into the Riverside Motel one day and never checked out, having taken his own life while Travis was young, and Travis has survived by suppressing everything about his childhood completely, and the creature that stalks him throughout the game is the Butcher, a figure very similar to Pyramid Head in function, which is to say it exists not as an external threat, but as a manifestation of something internal. And the question the game builds toward is whether Travis himself has a violent and buried nature that he has never confronted. And Origins is notable in the franchise for being the game that most explicitly connects the personal trauma of a protagonist to the formation of Silent Hill as a supernatural place, suggesting that the town feeds not just on guilt already committed, but on darkness that has never been named. And Travis rescuing Alessa before the Order can fully exploit her suffering is an act of genuine decency, and it is exactly the kind of act that Silent Hill does not let pass without consequence, pulling Travis back into its fog to make him account for everything he has refused to remember. Silent Hill Homecoming. Alex Shepard is a soldier who returns to his hometown of Shepherd's Glen in the year 2008 to find his younger brother Josh missing, and his mother catatonic, and his father gone, and the town itself emptying out as people disappear, and a fog begins rolling in from the edges in the same way it does in Silent Hill, which is not a coincidence because Shepherd's Glen was founded by 4 families, including the Shepherds, who made a covenant with the same dark force that governs Silent Hill, agreeing to sacrifice 1 child per generation in exchange for the town being spared. And at some point the family stopped honoring the covenant and the town began to pay the price. And as Alex searches for Josh, moving through a hospital and a flooded neighborhood, and eventually Silent Hill itself, he encounters increasingly horrifying versions of creatures that seem designed specifically around his emotional wounds. And the game is building toward a reveal that is delivered with real cruelty, which is that Alex was never actually deployed overseas, and was in fact a patient at a psychiatric institution called Eagle Point. For the entire period he believes he was serving his country, having constructed the soldier identity to cope with a traumatic event. And that event was the accidental drowning of Josh in a lake when Alex was a child, an accident that his father witnessed and that his father never forgave him for. And so, everything Alex believes about himself is a story he told himself, because the truth was unbearable and the other world of Shepherd's Glen. And Silent Hill shapes itself entirely around this, specifically around the idea of a child who was loved less and knew it. And Homecoming is a divisive entry in the franchise, but its central wound, which is the damage done to a child by a parent's withheld love, is one of the most genuinely painful ideas in the entire series. Silent Hill Shattered Memories. Harry Mason wakes up from a car crash in Silent Hill in the winter of 2008, with no memory of who he is, and his daughter Cheryl is missing, and the town is buried in ice, and the game that unfolds is not a remake of the original Silent Hill, but a reimagining of it that uses the same names and the same basic premise to tell an entirely different story. And what makes Shattered Memories structurally unique is that at intervals the game cuts to a therapy session in which a man named Dr. Kaufman is conducting a psychological evaluation of a patient using drawings and word associations and questionnaires, and the answers the player gives during these sessions actually change the game. World Harry experiences changing the appearance of characters and the nature of the monsters and the emotional texture of the environments in real time, so that the Silent Hill Harry moves through is different for every player based on the psychological profile they build through their choices. And the creatures in this version of Silent Hill are purely chase sequences. Harry cannot fight anything, he can only run, which is a radical departure for the series and carries its own thematic meaning. And the game builds toward a revelation that reframes everything that came before it, which is that Harry Mason has been dead since the car crash at the beginning of the game, and the therapy patient is Cheryl, who is now an adult woman who has spent her entire life mythologizing her father, constructing an idealized version of him that she has been unable to let go of. And the entire game is her memory of a father who never existed quite the way she remembers him. And Shattered Memories is the Silent Hill entry, most explicitly about grief and about the violence that memory does to the people we have lost by turning them into something that serves our needs rather than something that was real. Silent Hill Downpour. Murphy Pendleton is a prisoner being transferred by bus through the mountains near Silent Hill in the year 2012 when the bus crashes and Murphy finds himself the only survivor walking into a fog-covered town that has been waiting for exactly someone like him. And Murphy is not an innocent man, and the game is transparent about this from the beginning, showing in fragments the act that put him in prison, which was the murder of a man named Napier, a fellow inmate. And by the time the full context of that murder is revealed, it lands with the specific moral complexity that defines the best Silent Hill entries, because Napier was not random. He was the man who killed Murphy's young son, Charlie, and the murder was not a psychotic break, but a cold and deliberate act of revenge. And the other world that Silent Hill constructs for Murphy is saturated with this question of whether what he did was justice or simply more violence. And a police officer named Anne Cunningham pursues Murphy through the town with the same relentless personal motivation because Napier was her father, and she has spent years wanting Murphy dead. And the two of them moving through Silent Hill with parallel grief and parallel rage and reaching their respective moments of reckoning is the emotional architecture of the entire game, and the monsters Murphy encounters are drawn from guilt and from the specific terror of incarceration, of being trapped and controlled, and of what a person becomes when the systems meant to deliver justice fail completely, and Downpour ends in multiple ways, depending on the choices made throughout and in the best endings. Murphy does something genuinely difficult, which is choose to live with what he did rather than be destroyed by it. And that is as close to hope as Silent Hill usually gets. Silent Hill. Book of Memories. A young person receives a mysterious package in the mail with no return address. Inside is a leather-bound book, the Book of Memories, containing their entire life written out in precise detail. Every memory, every relationship, every choice recorded as though someone has been watching, since birth. They soon discover the book is not merely a record. By rewriting its entries, they can alter what has already happened, changing outcomes, erasing relationships, rewriting pain. The power is immediate and intoxicating, but the act of rewriting opens something. A dungeon world tears itself into existence around the protagonist. A shifting mechanical labyrinth built from Silent Hill's visual language of rust, blood, chain, and industrial decay, but reorganized into something more deliberate, more like a designed trap than an organic nightmare. Presiding over all of it is Whately. He presents himself as a neutral facilitator, a servant of the protagonist's own desires, offering guidance without judgment as they navigate deeper into the dungeon. He frames everything as a transaction. You want something rewritten, he provides the means. No agenda, no cost, or so he claims. The game tracks how the protagonist uses the book across an alignment system, whether their rewrites serve selfish ends or compassionate ones. This shapes which of the 6 endings they reach and what version of Whately they ultimately confront. As the protagonist pushes deeper, Whately's neutrality begins eroding. His interest in the book and in the protagonist feels older than the situation suggests. Details accumulate. He has done this before. He has offered this power to others, in other times, under other circumstances. The book has always extracted something in return, and Whately has always been there to collect. His true nature as something ancient and manipulative is the revelation the game withholds until its final moments. He was never a facilitator. He was a predator operating through consent, allowing people to damn themselves with their own desires. The central bargain of Book of Memories, the seduction of rewriting your past, and the inevitable cost of that rewriting, is the most Silent Hill idea the series has ever offered, delivered inside its most unconventional shell. Silent Hill F. The story. Shimizu. Hinako is a high school girl living in Ebisugaoka, a small rural Japanese village in the 1960s. Her life is already suffocating before the horror begins. An abusive father, a broken mother, a looming arranged marriage she never asked for. After a fight at home, she turns to her friends Shu, Rinko, and Sakuko for comfort. Shu gives her small red capsules, said to help with her headaches. She takes them. That is the mistake that opens everything. Fog rolls into Ebisugaoka. Red spider lilies burst through the ground and swallow the town. A creature in a white bridal kimono, a Shiramuku, begins stalking Hinako through the streets. When Sakuko eats one of the red lilies, she dies instantly. The town is sealed, the bridges are gone, there is no way out. Hinako begins losing consciousness and waking in a place called the Dark Shrine. where a masked figure called Fox Mask watches over her with unsettling tenderness. He is eventually revealed to be Tsuneki Kotoyuki, her childhood companion, and the boy her parents once intended her to marry. In the Dark Shrine, he asked her to kill her friends. Then he asked her to marry him. The rituals begin, her arm is replaced, her face is masked. The longer she remains in the Dark Shrine, the more she becomes the monster she has been running from. Back in the real world, Hinako sits down to dinner with her family. The two versions of herself, the girl she was and the creature she is becoming, collide at the table. Her parents die. Her human self is consumed. At the altar in the Dark Shrine, the final confrontation begins. Hinako against herself. The game offers 5 endings. In the darkest, she loses and marries Kotoyuki. In the lightest, she defeats both her shadow self and Kotoyuki, and walks away. In the truest, she makes peace with both halves of herself and chooses her own future. The question underneath all of it is simple and devastating. When a girl is told her whole life what she is for, what happens to the part of her that refuses?